You know, somehow I keep running into camera problems to solve, and I've got another one today, and it's actually right here. Like most people, my webcam is on top of my monitor, but that puts it above my head and it's looking down on me. I would love it if it were more at eye level, because this is just a far more natural way to talk to somebody. So today, we're gonna figure out how to put this camera right in the middle of my screen, but only sometimes. Of course, you can already buy little tiny cameras that are on sticks to mount in the middle of your monitor. You've got some that have suction cups on the back, and that's fine, but I've already got a camera that I like. I wanna keep using that one, so instead, I wanna build a solution that works with what I've already got. And I've got a couple of ideas. For a couple of weeks now, I've been sketching some ideas for this project in my notebook, and I've got like 7 or 8 different things, ranging from really complex armatures that come over the back of the monitor to things that lift up from underneath, but I've narrowed it down to 2 that are pretty simple. But quickly, I was thinking about something the other day. Every time I do a project video, you only see the last idea or 2. But there's usually a bunch more that lead up to that, and nobody ever sees them. So I think what I'm gonna do today is actually make a video going through the different ideas that I'm not gonna make, and just talk about why they're a good idea or why they're a bad idea. Then I'm gonna put that video up for our Maker Alliance. Those are the people that support us on Patreon and YouTube membership. If you wanna find that video or join the Discord, it's an awesome group of people. I'll put a link down in the description and you can check it out. But for now, let's talk about the 2 ideas that I think might work. None of the ideas are gonna be worthwhile if they don't meet criteria that I have set for myself. So here's what this thing needs to do. It needs to be able to sit on top of the monitor and in the middle of it, but also be able to adjust a little bit. It needs to not scratch the monitor, so I've gotta put some sort of a separation in there to protect the screen. There's a cable that comes off the back of the camera, so I've gotta figure out how to manage that. And the camera's kind of heavy, so it's really gonna wanna lean forward on its own, and I've gotta work against that. Here are the 2 simplest ideas that I could come up with. And the first one uses fabric. I mean, if you put a piece of fabric connected right here, and then you drape it over and hook it on the back side, you can just kind of like drop it down and have it hang from the fabric. Now the problem there is that that fabric has to be wide enough so the camera doesn't do this, and you have to be able to see through it so you don't miss out on a lot of the screen. And you also have to be able to adjust it up and down, which means you have to be able to move it on the fabric or hook the fabric in different places across the top. That might be doable. And the other one is even simpler, honestly. If you put a pivot point right here, and then a fixed piece that goes up and has a built-in hook to hook over the top of the monitor, if you take it off the top and just drop it down, it's gonna hook itself in place. Now the only problem here is that that doesn't allow the camera to move up and down a little bit, but I think we could probably engineer some sort of adjustment into that upright. I think we should start here. The pieces from version 1 of the hook idea are off the printer, and I know that they're not gonna work, but I just needed to visualize something, and I've learned a couple of things already. First, the hook up here that goes on top of the monitor works perfectly, so I'm just gonna keep that. But then further down, the connection point between these 2 pieces, that's where I gotta figure some stuff out. Now this little ledge here that the camera's gonna sit on is not deep enough for the camera, so I know I have to change that. I also don't know yet, and won't know yet, how long this foot needs to be to stop it from leaning over. But the biggest thing that I don't know is how to connect these 2 pieces together in a way that's gonna last. As I was modeling these pieces, I intentionally did not model a hinge right here because I didn't think I needed it. I thought that I could put a piece of fabric glued onto both of these surfaces and it would act as a hinge. And I think it will, but there's a problem. From one perspective, this totally works because as you put this on top of the monitor, the hook will fall back. That's exactly what I want, but I think the problem is that when you put a bunch of weight out here and you've got fabric glued to 2 pieces of plastic, you're gonna run into that. So in version 2, I'm gonna make this thing longer and this thing longer and model in a hinge between the 2 pieces. That's pretty good, but I also need to figure out how to move this thing up and down on this arm so I can adjust where the camera goes. Haven't figured that out yet. Version 2 of the model is done-ish. It's got a hinge built into it, which is really cool, and that hinge is gonna work around this nail. So let's print it out, see if this works. Version 2 of the prints came out, and they actually don't fit together. I forgot to add any clearances into this, so while it looks like it will probably work, it doesn't actually go together like it's supposed to. So I took a bunch of measurements and changes from this, and I printed this version. There were quite a few changes on this version, and these pieces fit together really nicely, and the hole for the pin works perfectly, and it hinges just like it's supposed to, but also, it's not gonna work at all. So I had an idea on this, and I was just wrong. I just didn't know that it wouldn't work until I tried it. I was thinking that this foot would stop it from leaning forward, but that only works if this thing can't move as well. But since this is hinged at the top, it can just do that. So from that, I learned that basically there can't be a hinge here. There's no way that this can work. And it also tells me that the whole fabric idea won't work for the exact same reason. I almost threw this entire idea away, but I decided to sit down over lunch with a sketchbook and try to come up with another idea that didn't take advantage of a hinge. And I think I have something. This idea is a little bit more three-dimensional. I think it's gonna be harder for me to draw, so I may just have to model it. But the whole idea is that we have to remove the hinge. We can still have the whole hook part slide up and down, and that's what we want to try to do here by making a slot that the camera mount can fit into, and so it can slide up and down, but then also lock into different positions so that we can adjust the height of it, which is something I hadn't solved in the last version. As I'm thinking about it right now, each one of the side pieces of the hook that's hanging down is gonna have a cutout in it that's shaped kind of like that. And then the camera mount will be fit in the middle, in between those. And as you lift it, you can slide it down into a groove to lock it into place. But then if you pull it to the back section, it can move up and down completely. I think I just have to model it. There's a couple of pretty big advantages to doing it the way that I'm thinking, assuming it works. One, like I said, you can adjust it up and down. That's pretty great. But also there's gonna be a lot less surface touching the screen, which means fewer opportunities to scratch the screen and just fewer things in the way. Now the downside to this is that I have to make it in multiple pieces and assemble it together around the camera mount. Let's give it a shot. This video is sponsored by Element, and this is something I've been using multiple times a week for at least a year, maybe longer. I'm a runner, but whether you work out a lot or you run a lot, when you sweat, you lose your electrolytes and you need to get them back into your body, and this is the easiest way to get them back. This is a little mix-in packet that you pour into water, depending on how salty you want it to be, but it's full of sodium, potassium, magnesium, but it does not have any nasty chemicals or sugars. So I mix one of these into a bottle of water after every run, I drink it right away, and then that helps me rehydrate from all the stuff I lose. And rehydrating is not just about not being thirsty, it actually affects how your skin feels and how well you sleep. And I learned recently that the discs in your spine re-expand by hydrating while you sleep. They can't do that if you don't have enough hydration in your body. I really like this stuff and I use it all the time. And they've got a bunch of different flavors. I prefer the fruit flavors like raspberry and citrus and orange, but they've also got chocolate and all sorts of other stuff. And one really cool thing is, right now, if you hit my link down in the description and go buy something from Element using that link, you get a free sample pack with all the flavors to try. And that's whether you've ordered from them before or not. And once you get the Element in and you try it out, the coolest thing is that they have a no questions asked refund policy. If you don't like it for any reason, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. And if you want to find out more about why this is good for you, they've got a really extensive science section on their website that explains how they came up with the formula and what all it does. Whether you're a runner or you work out a lot or you just spend a lot of time outside and sweat, you need to rehydrate. So hit the link down below, go check them out. Big thanks to Element for sponsoring this video, and big thanks to you for supporting our sponsors. So this idea is pretty cool. It hooks on the front of the monitor, and then you can take the little carriage that has a camera and slide it up to where you want, and it locks into the location. So that solves that problem. Unfortunately, it also creates another problem that I have to show you at the computer. On the front of the monitor, this works great. You can hook it on and then place it where you want it, or just drop it all the way down. But the problem is when you try to put it behind the monitor, it doesn't really fit. So one of the issues with this monitor in particular is it's got a curve this way, but the back profile of it also has a curve kind of like that. And that means that these two pieces need to be able to hinge apart, like version 1, so that this part can swing back out of the way to make room on the back of the monitor. And this doesn't do that. And the cool thing is, at this point, through all the different iterations, I think I've solved all the problems in different ways. I've just got to put them all together. And I do think I know how to do it, but it's here, and I need it to be there. While I'm in the other room actually modeling this, I can also be in here telling you how it's gonna work so you don't have to watch me model. Basically, the cool thing about this old idea was that there was a slot, so the plate that holds the camera can move up and down. But then there's also these little grooves that will help it lock into different positions. We can use both of those things, but separate them out so that they're not in the same space. So the new idea is to have a very similar kind of hook that's gonna go over it. But this time it's got a slot down the middle of it. Then we have the plate that holds the camera and it'll sit out here, but it'll also have a little wing that goes over. It has a pin that goes through that slot. So these two pieces can slide up and down, but they can also pivot away from each other on that pin. But then what about the whole pivot problem that we had in the beginning? Well, we fixed that by putting the notches on the front of this piece, and then we put a little key on the bottom of the camera mount that fits into the notches. That probably doesn't actually help explain it any, but there is another key piece that is a lot different than the old one. The old one was a box, right? And there was this little pattern in both of these sides, and then the mount went in between them. But this new version is actually the camera mount with a center spine that goes up through the middle of it. And that's how those two things are bound together. Either way, that probably still didn't help, so I'm just gonna print it out. I'll show it to you. The pieces for what I hope is the final design are off the printer, and all three of these pieces go together with no glue. In fact, they only use pins or nails to fit together, and I'm pretty excited to see if that is actually gonna work. Since you only saw a terrible drawing of them before, let me show you what each piece is. This is what I'm calling the hook because it's got a hook on the top, but it's got a slot that runs all the way down through it and then grooves on the front for the plate to fit into. And this is the plate. It's the same camera plate that I showed you before, but it's got a couple of things added to it. One, it's got some tabs on the back so it can go through the slot on the hook. It's got the little thing on the bottom that will go into the notches, and then it's also got an extra thing on the bottom for a hinge. And that's gonna hinge to this piece. It's gonna act as a way to be able to lock the entire thing against the back of the monitor so it doesn't fall off. Let's put it together and see if it works. Okay, let's see how this works. All right, first off, we can adjust the placement of it, which is really cool. Very easy to do. And then when we go to take it off, just lift it up, flip down the little arm, and it hooks on the back just like that one. It's totally doing everything I needed to do, but there is a little bit of slop in all of the different motions. Like this could be a little bit tighter. The whole thing should be a little bit wider so it doesn't slide back and forth. And the biggest thing is that this front piece of the hook is too thin. What I'm finding is that this front piece right here is really thin because of all the little notches, which means it bends when you put pressure on it, a lot more than the back is willing to bend. So I think I can just thicken that up. But other than that, I just have a little extra room up in here that allows it to slide around. I think this whole thing could be a little bit wider so it doesn't do this. It's really close, and since all the changes are very small, I'm just gonna fix them and reprint it in black so you don't really see it, and then we'll put the camera on and make sure that everything is good. Check that out. It totally works. And it actually fits really well, and you can't tell it's there until you go to switch the camera from this to this, which is exactly what I wanted, to be able to talk to a camera straight at eye level. It's gonna be awesome for doing podcasts and all sorts of other stuff. This thing works great, but one of the things I like the most about it is that it is the collection of a bunch of individual solutions from each one of the failed prototypes. They all came together and made one thing that works super well. Now, usually when I do these problem-solving videos, the files that I end up with to print the thing, I'm not super confident in them. They work, but I don't really want to give them to anybody else because they're not perfect. But this one, although not perfect, I think it works well enough that other people can use it. So for the first time, I'm gonna take these files and actually make them available. I'm gonna put them for sale really cheap on the website. You can go over there and download them and print this out and build one for yourself. And I would love to know how it works for you if you do. Also, if you're in the Maker Alliance, you're gonna get these for free, no big deal. But if you would prefer to actually make your own, you can learn how to model this stuff with our course, Fusion for Makers. I'm gonna put a discount to that and a link to it down in the description, along with these files. Go check it all out. Thanks for hanging out with me on this one. I appreciate it. Catch you next time. Like a lot of people, my webcam sits on top of my monitor, but that puts it above me, looking down on me, when I would prefer, I would love it. I would love it. I loved it. You know, somehow, I keep coming in, because this is far more natural when you're talking, snots.